Hello brothers and sisters. Today I am continuing the theme on Hebrews, and we're looking at Hebrews chapters 5 through to chapter 7 in a two-part series on Christ is superior to Aaron. Now you're probably wondering why I'm sitting here in a bedroom, nice soft lighting, rather Marlon Brando-esque in Apocalypse Now, with hushed tones, a bit like David Attenborough. And I figured I'd just play up to the part that actually talking about priesthood and going into Exodus and Numbers is probably not a lot of people's idea of an invigorating and stimulating sermon. So I figured, well, it can go one of two ways. For those of you who that is going to be interesting, fantastic, climb on board, we're in for a ride. And for those of you who it's not interesting at all, that's fine. Get yourself a nice warm drink, snuggle up in bed and have some bedtime listening. Sweet dreams. Right. Aaron. Who is he? Well, he was the first high priest, the brother of Moses, and the pair of them were Levites. Who were the Levites? Well, we need to rewind back to Abraham. Abraham had two sons. Ishmael, the eldest, not interested in him. Isaac was the youngest and the child of the promise. Isaac had two sons. Esau, the eldest, father of the Edomites, not interested in him. And Jacob, the youngest. His name was changed to Israel after he wrestled with God, which is what his name means. And he became the father of the Israelites. He had 12 sons and one daughter. Eldest son, Reuben, had an incestuous affair and was therefore ripped from the birthright the eldest son would normally get. Second son was Simeon, third son was Levi, and Levi was a nutter. Simeon and Levi also lost the birthright, went on to Judah in the end, but Simeon and Levi lost that birthright that Reuben lost because they did a massive slaughter of all the people in the city of Shechem. It's recorded in Genesis 34, so I'll let you have a read about that. It's a random story in the middle of Genesis, and we never really hear from Dinah again, who was their sister, and who this thing was done against. But needless to say, he lost his birthright, but we see actually there's something going on here. So I've subtitled this sermon, Levi's bloodlust, it's in the genes. Levi, genes. See what I did there? Anyway, so as we go through the rest of the Old Testament, we see that the Levites are a bit of a nutty, bloodthirsty bunch. So the passage I want to focus on, other than Hebrews, is actually in Exodus and in chapter 32, verses 19 to 29. We get a good understanding of the bloodlust of the Levites and how they came to become the priestly tribe. We get an understanding of Aaron as well, and the frailty and the weakness that this high priest had. And it helps us to understand a bit more of the picture that's been spelled out in Hebrews and chapters 5 and 6. So, Exodus 32, 19 to 29 in the contemporary English version. Moses got closer to the camp. He saw the idol, this is the golden calf, and he also saw the people dancing around. This made him so angry that he threw down the stones and broke them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. He melted the idol the people had made and he ground it into powder. He scattered it into their water and made them drink it. Moses asked Aaron, "What did these people do to harm you?" So Moses presumes here that the people must have, by force, made Aaron create this gold calf. "Why did you make them sin in this terrible way?" Moses asked him. Aaron answered, "Don't be angry with me. You know as well as I do that they are determined to do evil. They even told me, that man Moses led us out of Egypt, but now we don't know what has happened to him. Make us a god to lead us." Then I asked them to bring me their gold earrings. They took them off and gave them to me. I threw the gold into a fire and out came this bull. Really, Aaron, you threw some gold into a fire and a bull walks out, and I suppose the dog ate your homework too. Moses knew that the people were out of control and that it was Aaron's fault. And now they had made fools of themselves in front of their enemies. So I'm just going to quickly pause there. So we see Moses realises that Aaron is not the strongest of characters. He means to do well. He realises the people are going off the rails. They're looking for gods to worship, to follow, like the peoples around them. And Aaron realises that Yahweh is the true God. But he doesn't quite grasp the fact that by making an idol, it goes against everything that you're creating, something that the Creator has already made to worship him with. It's nonsensical, but Aaron didn't quite get it. Aaron, being a human, wanted to please the people, wanted to keep them on side, wanted to keep them in track with God, went about it the wrong way. So, back to Exodus. So Moses stood at the gate of the camp and shouted, "Everyone who is on the Lord's side, come over here." Then, surprise, surprise, the men of the tribe of Levi gathered around Moses, and he said to them, "The Lord God of Israel commands you to strap on your swords and go through the camp, killing your relatives, your friends, and your neighbours." The men of the Levi tribe followed his orders, and that day killed 3,000 men. Moses said to them, "You obeyed the Lord and did what was right, and so you will serve as his priests for the people of Israel. It was hard for you to kill your own sons and brothers, but the Lord has blessed you and made you his priests today." So, as you can see, the Levites were a passionate bunch. Had no qualms about killing anything. Brothers, sons, family, neighbours, people they didn't know, animals. They'll pretty much put their hand to anything. It's no real surprise, in the sense, that the Levites came and stood by Moses when Moses said, "Whoever's for God, stand with me," because Moses was one of them. Moses was a Levite because Levi had 3 sons, Gershon, Merari, and Kohath. Aaron and Moses were descendants of Kohath. And this is important in as much as it's only the Kohathites, or the descendants of Kohath, who were allowed to become priests. The Gershonites and the Merarites were also Levites, but they did all the other jobs. So they would do the work to the temple, gatekeepers, musicians, singers, looking after the flocks and the farming, tending the land. Anything else that did not involve being a priest was down to those 2 tribes. So we look at Exodus 32. We see Moses has set apart the Levites as priests. But it wasn't until we read in Numbers in chapter 3 that God sets apart the Levites as priests. And again, there's a story around that as well, and I'll let you read that just for the sake of time. But God says that it's only the Levites who can minister before him. So what does a priest do? Well, Hebrews chapter 5, we're going to the New Testament at last, aren't I, sums it up this way. Every high priest is selected from among the people and is appointed to represent the people in matters related to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray, since he himself is subject to weakness. This is why he has to offer sacrifices for his own sins first, as well as for the sins of the people. So, a priest is someone who acts on our behalf before God. Now, over the centuries, from the time of Exodus and 32, right the way through to the time of Jesus, the power and the influence of the priests increased. The role of high priest eventually became not just a religious role, but it became political as well. The priests ensured the people of Israel did not forget their God by making more and more of the religious rites and services and sacrifices, and they made sure they were carried out, and they obviously needed to because their own livelihood depended upon it. If nobody offered sacrifices, you didn't eat, you wouldn't get fed. So it was in their best interest to ensure that people still carried on sacrificing animals and doing all the rest of the bits and pieces that were called on in the Torah. By the time of Jesus, the priests were part of the religious establishment and were seen as upholders of the law. And Jesus often had debates with the priests and the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They all worked together in the temple, and Jesus would debate with each of them. So, what does that mean for us? What can we learn from this? Well, 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9 says this: "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood," we'll get onto that next time, "a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." So we're priests. Yeah. Yes, we are. Now, we don't need to dress up in special clothes, but Dowd does. But we don't need to. What it means is by our lives, that's the way we're priests. In verse 12 of 1 Peter 2, Peter says, "Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbours. Then even if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honourable behaviour and they'll give honour to God when he judges the world." So to sum up, Aaron was the first priest, a descendant of a chosen line, the Levites, set apart. But they were sinners themselves, so had to purify themselves first before they could stand before God on our behalf. Jesus, however, is without sin. He can stand with us before God. We are called to be priests and to live right before our non-believing neighbours and friends. That's the whole role of a priest, to stand before God on behalf of somebody else. And as by living right, we therefore set an example to those around us. Next week, we'll be looking at Melchizedek and understand why it's important that Jesus wasn't a Levite. Sweet dreams.